developed by Ryuga Gotoku Studios and published by Sega, originally for the Sony PlayStation 4 and later PlayStation 5, personal computer, Xbox One on Xbox Series X and S in 2020 was that of Yakuza, Like a Dragon. In 2001, Ichiban Kasuga, a low-ranked Yakuza of the Dojo clan in Kamurocho, through details in the game willingly takes blame for a murder committed by a higher-ranked officer in the clan. Spending nearly 20 years in the gaol, he's later released in 2019 and seeks to reclaim his life and to return to the Dojo clan. Details later, however, that a lot has changed in the time that he was incarcerated, and Ichiban returns to the gangster scene and learns that the Yakuza way of life in Kamurocho or even Japan has completely changed. He eventually encounters others who will help him find out about the truth of what had happened, and for Ichiban to find his new purpose in life while not forgetting where he had come from. Kazuma Kiryu had been the main character of the Yakuza franchise since the first installment released in 2005. As a result of all of the main installments and even some side stories released after the original Yakuza and before Like a Dragon, resulted in a complex and even somewhat confusing timeline as to what was considered canonical and what wasn't in official continuity in relation to details. As per events of the Yakuza games, Kiryu's status in the franchise was complex and a consensus were that his time as the main focus of the series was nearing its end. However, in the game, Kiryu isn't mentioned by dialogue at all and is only referred to in text. He was depicted as someone so powerful that Ichiban and his friends aren't sure if they can defeat him in battle, and they try to, and Ichiban fights valiantly but isn't able to technically defeat Kiryu, and after the fight, Kiryu says to Ichiban that it wasn't about winning or losing the fight, just that the battle itself had meaning. Ichiban asked who he was, and Kiryu said that due to finally obtaining what he had desired in life and to make sure those he cherishes remain safe, can't do much else to help Ichiban and the others, and tells him to stay strong for himself and others. But that wasn't the end of Kiryu's watching of Ichiban. If the player were to complete the game, then return to the Millennium Tower, the true final boss of the game is the Fixer, another character from previous Yakuza games. And if Ichiban and his friends defeat him in combat, dialogue between him and Kiryu mentioned that Ichiban wasn't necessarily meant to be a successor to him, and he is his own person and Ichiban is his own person as well, and it's just Kiryu saying that his story was completed and done, and Ichiban's will continue for the foreseeable future of that time. The Yakuza games were originally a niche market that only appealed to a select group of players outside of Japan from the United States and Europe. When the franchise was originally imported to the United States, it had limited success, but as the years and decades passed, it slowly gained more and more attention, as well as more and more respect, and players became more and more eager to experience the Yakuza games. Sega and Ryuga Gotoku's decisions to rebrand the franchise in the West with that of the Yakuza title was actually something of a stereotypical brand upon Japanese criminal gangs, on Western gamers who might not necessarily understand any other translation or title as such for the game in a Western market. Expanding upon that notion further, the Yakuza in Japan aren't who they once were, so there were plans to distance the games from the real-life inspirations that later made the gaming franchise what it was in both Japan and abroad, as this was actually mentioned many times throughout the game that the whole situation with the Kamurocho 3K plan and the changing times made it gradually shift from Japanese gangsters on the criminal ilk to focus on other aspects for a story in Kamurocho with Like a Dragon. Most were welcome for these changes, as Like a Dragon was somewhat more similar to the original titles for the games in the Japanese releases. Sometimes a character could be forgotten because they weren't forgotten, just known by a different title in different regions of the world.